Today on CSB Unpasteurized Pectic Enzyme.
And yes, you're not confused. Do not adjust your set. We are outside.
This is our impromptu studio.
Hurricane Milton was a big giant jerk face, but it did get followed by a cold front.
Yeah.
And so the reason for the air quotes there that those of you who are just listening can't see.
I think it's like 72.
Yeah, it's not horrific outside.
Yeah.
But we do have
Planes, trains, and automobiles, and chainsaws.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's why we're using a whole different setup. Everything's a little bit different. Back to wireless mics just to try to focus on our voices more. So, I'm sorry if the audio is not as pristine as it normally is, but this is what we got right now. Anyway, so we're going to talk about pectic enzyme.
Right, and this is brought to you again from comments on the channel. Each time somebody, such as yourself, asks a question on the channel, I try to think about it more thoroughly and see, is that something that we can make a video out of? Is that something that needs to be further researched? So that way, not only do you have more information, but we have more information as well.
We always learn something when we do some research.
We do. And for this particular topic of pectic enzyme, we actually learned a lot. And it's really interesting to me. It's making me think about future ways of utilizing that protein to make our brews perhaps better.
Okay.
So the first thing I want to talk about is just the idea of additives and helps that you use in general in brewing. And I'm sure you are similar to us where you have a problem, right? Whatever that problem is, and you want to fix that problem. And so you do enough research or you ask enough questions just to fix that problem. And once you're there, you're good, you're golden, you don't go any further. I'm going to encourage myself, and I'm going to encourage you as well, to go beyond that. Sure, it's going to take a little bit more time, and maybe it won't even be that same day. Maybe you'll just fix your problem, and then when you have that glorious rare commodity known as free time, you can go a little bit farther. And
that's fair.
And I'm hoping that maybe I'll be able to resource that for you so you won't have to take the time. You can just watch one of our videos, and that might be helpful. So for pectic enzyme, we're going to start off with just, what is it?
Before you go there, I need to add to what you were just saying. Basically, what she's saying is, if you're going to add something to your brew, make sure you know why you're adding it and what it does. We hear a lot of people that automatically add a laundry list of stuff every single time. And, well, that might not be harmful. It certainly isn't always helpful to add all those things. Pectic enzyme is one of them. I hear a lot of people adding it to a lot of things that some of them don't even have pectin.
Yeah.
So it does nothing. But anyway.
So we're starting off with what is pectic enzyme, and I've actually seen other creators in the genre that have mislabeled it.
Yeah.
Completely unintentionally, I'm sure, but it made me question whether they had gone through and done the deep dive that I did, which they probably didn't. And honestly, until we got the question, we hadn't either. So I don't.
Well, we sort of did a while ago when we first started using pectic enzyme, and there's parts to it that we use, parts to it that we really don't pay attention to.
I'm trying to wait for the airplane to go away.
It won't really show up.
Oh, it won't?
We have noise canceling. I was joking about that.
Airplanes and...
Yeah, I can cut that out.
Okay.
They'll hear a slight bit, but not that much.
All right.
Yeah.
Good to know. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just
okay.
thought we should pause for
No, it's fine.
noise. Apparently our technology is awesome.
Yeah.
Yay,
good.
technology. Okay, so pectic enzyme is an enzyme that breaks down pectins.
Right.
So therefore, you need to know what pectins are before you can truly understand what pectic enzyme is. Pectins are the jelly-like substance that holds the cells together in fruits and even some other plants. So if you think about it, pectin is really critical if you're going to make a jelly, jam, or preserve.
Right.
And
You
that's
want
why
pectin.
you can even purchase pectin itself to add to fruits such as strawberries that are low in pectin.
Right.
The quantity of pectin naturally occurring in fruit varies drastically. So this is something you want to take into consideration before you even decide whether you need to use pectin enzyme or not. Because if it's a low pectin fruit, you might not need it. But we're going to cover that a little bit later more deeply. So one of the questions you might ask is like, okay, well, that's just a generic answer of what pectic enzyme is, but what is it really? Well, so it is produced industrially through bacterial fermentation and fungus. So it creates
Did not know that.
So it creates this protein combination or enzyme that is going to attack and break down the molecules of pectin into smaller sized elements that are also soluble. So at the current state, their pectin is like a larger.
Yeah, it's not water soluble.
It's not water soluble.
Oh, okay.
So it's not destroying the pectin, it's just breaking
Breaking
it
it
down,
down.
which allows the further breaking down of all the other good stuff that you want when you're fermenting.
Okay. Question though.
Yes,
Pectic enzyme occurs naturally too, doesn't it?
it does.
It's not only made in a factory.
Nope.
It actually occurs naturally.
It does. It does. And it has been safely used since the 1960s.
That's it?
Yeah,
Thought it'd be longer than that.
yeah. But basically, if you buy a wine, they use pectic enzyme. And there's reasons for that, particularly in winemaking, that I'm going to get to a little bit later. So I've talked about it briefly, but we're going to talk about it a little bit more succinctly, and that is, what does pectic enzyme do? And the gist of it is that it physically destroys the pectin.
It breaks it down.
It breaks it down. Bring it on down. So that's the fleshy part of the fruit, or the gel-like substance that's holding all the cells together.
Okay.
And that's why if you have rotten fruit, it just kind of liquefies.
Oh, because the
It's
pectin
because
broke
it's
down.
naturally breaking down because of the bacteria and fungus. Yay!
Yeah. Okay.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
Yes. It was the yay that I was shaking my head at.
I get excited about.
Yeah. About fungus.
About
apparently.
fungus. What can I say? When added to a must, it makes processing more efficient, because not only is it breaking down the pectin, but it's breaking down and separating all the other cells. So you're going to have a more stronger color from the natural color of the fruit.
Oh.
You're going to have more juice, because it'll help to extract the juice by breaking down those pectin cells.
Yeah.
And it also, in the case of wine, is going to break down the pectin in the skin, releasing more tannins.
Oh, okay.
So it does a lot more than just what we thought
Yeah,
of breaking down pectin so that you don't have the pectin haze. That's the most common use when people think about, I think in homebrew,
Yeah.
of why
Yeah.
to use.
For clearing.
Right.
Yeah, that's what most people think of. I knew it broke down the fruit more too, and there's more to that. When we're talking about that, I'll get to something on that too.
And as far as pectic haze goes, it's going to help abate it. And by that, I mean, it's not going to nullify it entirely.
Right.
It's just going to make those pectin particles smaller and more soluble, so
so they
that
can fall out a little
aids
easier.
in getting rid of it,
Okay.
rather than keeping it floating in suspension, which is
Yeah.
what causes pectic haze. All right. Next up is how to use it. And we use the powdered pectic enzyme, but there's also a liquid form.
There's actually a lot of different kinds of pectic enzyme too.
You're going to use half a teaspoon per gallon, or 1/10 tablespoon per pound of fruit. Because if you're doing a whole fruit thing and you have the time, energy, and gumption, if you will, if you add the pectic enzyme to the fruit itself before you even start the fermentation process, you're going to help break down the pectin and create that separation of the different elements of your fruit, so that way it'll be easier to ferment.
Okay.
So you'll get the tannins, you'll get the color, you'll get the juice, you'll get the true flavor of the fruit more readily
Right.
if you pre-treat it with a pectic enzyme.
Okay.
And this is commonly done, particularly in commercial winemaking. They're going to do that before they even press the grapes.
Yeah.
They're going to treat it with the pectic enzyme.
Now, one thing I want to point out, this is possibly the only downside to using pectic enzyme, and it's a partial downside. There's a lot of concern about methanol and methyl alcohol, which they're the same thing, but there's a lot of people worried about that when they make homebrew. Now, we've already done videos explaining that there's really nothing to worry about, but I do want to point out that using pectic enzyme to help break down the fruit actually produces more methanol. How much more is greatly dependent on how much pectin there is for it to break down. It has to do with what it breaks it down into and the way that the yeast actually, whoa, he was close, actually convert. So it does produce a bit more methanol. Does it produce it in a dangerous quantity? I'm going to say no. No.
It can't, because if it did, commercially made wine
Yeah.
wouldn't use it all the time.
So there's going to be a small amount more. Not anything to worry about. I just like full disclosure. And that is the only downside that I've really heard of doing it that way, putting it in prior to fermentation. Once you do it after fermentation, obviously there's no more fermentation happening, so it can break it down to whatever it wants and nothing's going to happen. Continue.
I shall. The reason why they stress that you add pectic enzyme before you start fermentation is that it's not as efficient once in the presence of alcohol.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense.
It kind of gets in the way of it doing its job when there's alcohol present.
Sure.
However, it can still be added if the brew is cloudy after fermentation and you want to help clear it out.
And general rule is you need twice as much.
Yeah.
To do the same amount. So half teaspoon per gallon becomes a teaspoon per gallon. Is it teaspoon? Yeah, half teaspoon per gallon.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
You don't need much of it. Goes pretty far.
That's correct. So this is another thing that I found interesting that I didn't know about, and that was how to properly store pectic enzyme. Because we get the powdered form, we just assume put it on the shelf, you're good to go. Well, yes and no. Ideally, you want to store it in the refrigerator.
Even the powdered stuff?
At 30 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Brian will put the Celsius conversion right here.
Because I don't know it off the top of my head. It's probably like 0 to 6 or something,
Yeah.
but it was already on the screen, so you already know.
So liquid enzymes will lose 3 to 5% viability per year if not properly stored. And I think there's still a slight degradation regardless. And powdered enzymes will only lose 1 to 2%.
So you're pretty good keeping the powdered stuff on the shelf.
You're pretty good. You
Ours
just
won't
wanna
last a year.
take that in consideration. Right. And that's why we like to buy the smaller quantities rather than the bulk quantities. Because that way we're constantly having a fresh supply that we won't have to worry about whether it's able to do its job correctly or not.
And if you like the one that we use, which comes from North Mountain Supply, we'll have a link in the description below to that, as well as a couple other things that we talk about in the video.
Are there any other things you can think of that you'd want to talk about pectic enzyme?
Not specifically. I mean, to me, as a clarifier, it's probably one of the more benign, if you will, meaning like it's just not going to hurt anything. Putting in too much probably won't affect anything, but there's no need. Like putting in more isn't going to make it more effective. But we hear all the time, like I accidentally added too much of this or I accidentally put too much of that. I think it's probably one of the more harmless additives you could use. That's why when we started opening up to more addition type things, it was the first, I think it was one of the first ones we started using.
Yeah.
We don't use it a lot because not everything has pectin.
Yeah.
So we've been asked many times on various things like, oh, could you not have used pectic enzyme? Well, not for that one because it didn't have any pectin in it.
Right. If there's no fruit or no plant material that has pectin in it, then there's really no use for pectic enzyme.
Or even if it's a low pectin fruit, it's not going to clear as well because it's the pectin that it's going to get rid of. So if it's a low pectin fruit and you have clarity issues, it might not be pectin that's causing the clarity problem, which means pectic enzyme isn't going to work.
Right. We are doing
We have a test coming
soon to be released about clearing agents specifically.
Yeah.
And so that may be something interesting to watch if you're interested in clearing your brew.
Yep. We even have a control on that one. We do.
If you have any further questions about pectic enzyme or anything for that matter, brew related, please leave them in the comment section below.
As always, thank you so much for watching and have a great day.
Bye-bye.